regular meeting of the Romeo Downtown Development Authority for Monday, January 10th, 2022. Elizabeth, can we do a roll call?
Sure. Carr.
Yes.
Kellogg.
Here.
Melvon.
Here.
Frank is absent. Rose.
Here.
Hayes.
Here.
Kuznetsky.
Here.
Parker.
Yep.
And Stephen is.
Thank you. Can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first on the list, we've got public forum. We don't have anybody for that, so we'll move on to an approval of agenda. Can we get a motion for the approval of the agenda as presented?
So moved.
I have a motion by President Malzahn. Do I have a second?
Support.
Supported by Poznanski. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have our approval. Next, we need an approval of the minutes for the December 6th, 2021 informational meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by President Malzahn. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Tar. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. And now for the approval of the December 6th, 2021 regular meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Rose. Do we have a second?
Support.
Support by President Malzahn. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, next up, a new face to the crowd here. We've got our financial report by Carla Heck, the new accountant on board for the Romeo DDA. Carla?
Hi.
How are you?
Do you want me to stand or does it matter?
Probably go
yeah,
to the
get the
podium
podium.
because there's a microphone on there and yeah, thank you, Carl.
Okay. This report was actually filed by Carol still for this month. We had met in December, but so you can see on the bottom of the cash receipts, she submitted that report. We met in December, but I think with the holidays and she was a little uncertain in terms of how the transition was going to happen. Was not able to obtain QuickBooks access to all of the financial data. I still actually don't have it, but I'm going to get it this week. So anyway, so I let her do the report the way that she normally does it. I did observe her doing it, not that I didn't know how to do it, but just to kind of make sure I understood why she was doing some of the things that she was doing. And I just, I would have changed some things, but all I did was add lines to make it a little easier to read. She didn't give a balance sheet. She just did the activity in the checking accounts and the savings accounts and so forth, which I summarized for you in my financial report for December. Unless you need me to go through that, does anybody have any questions on what the money was spent on in December? Okay, so, and in terms of the budget, the reason she doesn't do a balance sheet is because she kind of summarizes your fund balance. She doesn't really give you a fund balance when she doesn't give you a balance sheet. So my proposal will be for next month when I'm preparing the financial statements down under proposed changes to the board packet. I will give you an actual balance sheet, which is actually called a statement of activity in governmental terms. It's like it's a statement of financial position in governmental terms, and it's a statement of activity, which is similar to an income statement for a regular business. I will give you both of those that are comparative to the prior year, and then we will still do a budget to actual. look a little bit different than this one, but it'll still contain the same information. And then we'll do a specific list of bills paid, which will be very clear, as opposed to kind of the activity that happened in the general ledger that you're getting now, which is a little bit less easy to read. And then she normally does it on a cash basis, which I understand from a simplicity standpoint, but we'll start to do it on more of the modified accrual basis, where you'll actually have an accounts payable. So things that come in, because like I said, we transferred $10,000 of investment money over to pay for bills that were upcoming. Well, you wouldn't even know that those bills were upcoming because you don't have an accounts payable. Now you'll have an accounts payable, and depending on what's in there, we could even just do a list of what's in there. It'll help you to anticipate financial money needs, cash needs coming up. So those are my proposals on how I'll change the board packet information for next month. My thought is that I would just do it the way I think that you might like it. I already do it for the Romeo Library, and that board is happy with it. So, but once we present it, whatever issues, questions, thoughts that you have, it can all be adjusted. Does that sound like a good plan with that?
Yeah, it sounds great.
Okay. And really, all of the things that I propose to do for you are still my next steps, because I haven't been able to get everything transitioned over from Carol. Her biggest issue, she really has been very transparent and cooperative. Her biggest issue really is that in the bylaws, it says that all of these responsibilities are to be done by the treasurer. And so she believes that whoever is elected as treasurer next should be doing those responsibilities. So she had a very hard time talking to Elizabeth and I and saying, okay, I'm ready to give this over. We pushed enough that she finally did, and I told her that as part of going through the policies, we will present a draft of a new policy that will then change the process to a much more functioning process. Especially, it's just, there was no segregation of duties when you had just one person doing it. Now we'll be with Elizabeth and I, and then the board reviewing, and the treasurer and the president signing the checks and so forth. It'll all be much more the way the auditors would like to see it done. So, so now I guess the only other thing that Elizabeth, well, I guess that's it for the financial statements. You need to have them approved.
Yes, we will need to do that, and then then we can do C after they do that part.
All right, so what we're looking for right now is an approval to pay the bills through January 3rd, 2022 in the amount of $12,716.97. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Parker. Do we have a second?
Support.
Second by Poznanski. Elizabeth, can we do a roll, please?
Sure, Tar,
Yes.
Kellogg? Yes. Malzahn?
Yes.
Grant is absent. Rose?
Yes.
Hayes?
Yes.
And Stevens, Poznanski?
Yes.
And Parker?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, and Elizabeth would like me to touch on 6C, approval of the monthly financial requirements. From my understanding of your prior board meeting, the first couple of areas on my proposal were voted on. The last section that I kind of need to have approved tonight is the monthly requirements, because now that I'll have QuickBooks, like this week, we have to issue a payroll check, and then there's some bills coming up, and I like the closing the month and that kind of stuff all goes in that monthly requirement amount. So for my initial proposal, I said that would be approximately 3 hours a week, which really won't play out that way. It'll be 1 or 2 for most of the weeks, and then 3 or so at the end of the month, 3 or 4 at the end of the month when I go to close and so forth. So, but anyway, so I put in an average of 12 hours for January, February, and March, which is $150 a week. And So I put $1,800 for 3 months, not to exceed $2,250, because I actually did a range of 10 to 15. You know, to be honest, I'm being very lenient on it. If I'm learning things or if it's not fully efficient, you know, I round way down. So, so anyways, I'm not anticipating that it would be over the 1,800, but it does seem like things tend to pop up out of surprise. So, so I guess I would be asking for your approval of the $1,800 for 3 months, not to exceed $2,250.
Which we have it worded in the action item for 6C is the language is there if anybody wanted to use that.
And what did we discuss before? What did we budget for?
Sure, so if you look down at her, I decided to include her proposal in the board packet because I anticipated we'd have some questions on that. So what was approved last month, of course, if we look back at the minutes you just approved, the first proposal that was approved for her was the 24. Actually, let me just pull back the minutes. That will probably make the most sense. So on 11D from last month's motion was to accept Carla Heck's proposal for initial steps 1 through 9 to improve financial reporting in the amount not to exceed $2,400. Then the next motion was for consulting with the Village of Romeo accountant, monthly fees for QuickBooks payroll, office expenses in an amount not to exceed $2,900. That's what the former, or the last two motions were. And so far, I mean, none of those things have happened quite yet, except for QuickBooks. You went ahead and got that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's been purchased.
And office.
And we've got some office supplies. But the village is letting us use quite a bit of standing space, you know, office equipment type things. So those expenses are definitely down. So if you look under the monthly requirements and special projects, the second page from her original proposal that's in your board packet, you know, there's some other things, if, you know, when we get to possible fiscal year-end planning, cash planning, budget assistance, you know, that type of thing, that's separate. But what we're proposing that's in the action item is highlighted on that second page.
I'll make a motion to approve the recommendation expenditure for the monthly financial requirements to include, but not limited to, payroll, processes to invoices, closing of the monthly financials, board packet financial reporting in the amount not to exceed $2,250.
We have a motion by Malzahn. Do we have a second?
There's discussion more on it, or?
We can discuss after a second.
Okay.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Parker. Greg?
Carla, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for doing this. Do you feel you've been fair with yourself on what you felt the job would entail? Because I don't think you have to be charitable. You should be paid for what you do. So, you know, I know you probably jumped into sort of a dark hole, not sure what was there, and so.
You know, it really has just been logistical late to begin with. I did jump into something that I knew Elizabeth and the getting it set up is the fun part for me. So once I get QuickBooks set, it really won't take me that long because I'm really familiar with QuickBooks. And I'm kind of excited. There's definitely some significant areas of improvement that you guys will see right away. You'll feel more comfortable with the way it's reported to you, so you'll feel more knowledgeable about the data. And those things can happen right away. And so forth.
Fair.
So I think I'm
we're not a charity, so don't.
Okay.
The other thing I was going to ask or maybe suggest, if you're going to rebuild this format, like the transactions by account as of for January 3rd that you talked about, there's probably some things down there if you wanted to add a line below there that could maybe give a little bit more explanation what those are. I've only been on the board maybe a year and a half, 2 years or something. But there's probably a few of us in this room right now that don't know what, for instance, where to go. It was a split with it was a something with the IRS US split for 1,159. It probably total makes sense to a couple people here, but maybe some place where you could space between there that gives a little bit more detail on what some of those expenses are. I don't know what Blue Bus is, and I don't,
That was the Samaritan House event that we did the fund request.
okay. all
Right.
That's-
In number 3, under my financial report, I did kind of say that activity for the month included a parking study, insurance. I tried to give a little bit of a definition there.
Yeah.
Just to, as an introduction to it. But yeah, the presentation will be completely different. I'll try and make sure that there's enough description. But I think just even the presentation will make it a lot easier for you
Yeah.
to be able to understand where the money's going. Obviously, the IRS money is the taxes for Elizabeth's salary and for, well, I haven't fully gotten into it, but for unemployment and
All
Social
right.
Security and Medicare, that kind of a thing. So that's what that one related to.
And those were, I think we didn't have those before, which is why it may look new on the report there. Does that kind of,
Yeah, and again, I don't want to overcomplicate it, but there's some stuff in there and it's easy to do. I would never be offended by offering too much description on what it was for. But I'm just one person, so, do whatever you want to do. I'm just,
Well, and sometimes you just have to do it at the beginning, and then everybody catches up, and you
Yeah.
don't have to do as much.
and it could be something that we address at, some of our goals and stuff
Right.
like that to kind of clarify anything that anybody's unclear of on the accounting ahead of time. But I think what Carl is doing is going to help just create a picture within that. So, did you have
Thank you.
something you wanted to add, John?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions, I guess they are. First of all, what we're approving, we're talking a 3-month time block.
Right, I have a commitment after that. We're building a house up north, so I
Yeah.
didn't want to commit for a long term.
That's fine, I just wanted to clarify that, because actually that kind of answers then my next part of the question. What we had discussed, I believe, in our last meeting and proposed and approved would be definitely helping transition, and thank you very much for doing that, which you've already done. At which time we need to hire an accountant. So we're still in that in-between time, I guess I'm asking you, since you kind of explained it to us as, hey, we gotta get something for this in-between time. So this will kind of get us through the next 3 months, which is our in-between time, until we find a solution that,
Yes.
would be more permanent, is that correct? Whether it be Carla or not.
Yes, and I've been speaking with, in fact, as you all know, I've been really pushing the whole Michigan Downtown Association. We had there was a teleconference last Thursday, and I posed that question, and I've been talking with a few different, several directors actually, but doing it in a forum where there was 15 people on the call was really helpful. And every single governmental body, their village, their city, their township actually does their books. So that was surprising. So Christine and I talked about that. Catherine Trapp, we've talked about it a little bit as far as if that's something that maybe they pay for it. On a couple occasions they don't actually pay for it, but they pay for part of the audit. They pay, so the fees are. But the fact that the DDA's office is within the village offices is helpful, because we do a lot of collaboration almost on a daily basis. So that is something that we're looking into, and I'm checking with other DDAs to see how do they actually do that.
So I just want to clarify for myself, if not anybody else, if you guys are already clear on this is still a temporary transition period.
Mm-hmm.
This will get us through the next 3 months, at which time we're going to have to discuss and figure out what we're doing, whether it be Carol or
My
not.
plan too is to have our financial statements reconciled to the ones that are in the audit. There is a difference in presentation for what you see versus the way it's presented in the audit because of a governmental requirement that makes it a little confusing. But overall, all I'm saying is everything will be ready to go in any direction. The other thing that I'm hoping for you is that once everything's set up, if you decide not to go with the village to do it, you'll be able to hire somebody at a less expensive rate. And because all of the structures there, it would just be more of a maintenance.
kind of like picking up where you left off.
Well, we'd be only having to do the easy part that's left over. So then you could hire someone at a rate that's, only a bookkeeper type of rate, and they'll save you money and maybe even be able to do some administrative things to help Elizabeth, whatever.
Great.
So officially your hat's out of the ring after 3 months? Or is that
Well,
just an unknown right now and we're just going to
It's
3 months?
So we're putting we're trying to build a house on Lake Sheboygan, and if it goes through, which I'm hoping to know by the beginning of February, then in May they'll break ground, and I don't really want to be committed to this. If it's too expensive, because everything is expensive right now, then maybe we would reconsider.
On this proposal, that's all I had. I do have a point regarding the budget before we do financial.
Okay, so just to reiterate, we have a motion to approve the expenditure for monthly financial requirements to include but not limited to payroll processes to invoices, closing of the monthly financials, and board packet financial reporting in an amount not to exceed $2,250. Elizabeth, can we do a roll call, please?
Yes. Tar?
Yes.
Kellogg?
Yes.
Malzahn?
Yes?
Brandt? Not here. Rose?
Yes?
Hayes?
Yes.
Poznanski?
Yes.
David is absent. Parker?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So, I'm sorry, Zach, if I may go, one discussion regarding the budget, if this is the time, if I didn't miss it already, but before we lose Carol.
Sure, if you have a,
Carla.
Carla, if you have a question for you, yeah, feel free.
Well, on the budget, as put here, which again, not to put you on the spot, because I know you didn't do that.
Right.
But if you are in fact now the one going forward, at least for the next few months, working on this, I guess, and not looking for an answer, this is just a suggestion going forward. There's 7 lines on this that are over budget. And I know that we've, with the exception of one that I know of, we've discussed and we approved, and that's not so much the issue. The issue is every time we discuss spending something that is either not on the budget or over the budget, we say, oh, we can take the funds from here or there. I don't know if those funds were removed from where we had said they were going to be removed, but at the very least going forward, some method so we can see where they did come from.
Yes, that is a very important thing to do. It's a requirement for governmental accounting that you do not spend money that you have not budgeted. So yes, all of those things are very important, and it was included as a part of my proposal. It will probably not happen for the February meeting, but it should happen for the March meeting. Once I get the financials organized in a way that is a little bit more informative, then we would actually go through, Elizabeth and I and possibly some of the board members. At that point, we'll go back through the budget and put the money in the right places. And in addition to that, when you do that though, you have to, the board then, we will present to the board the changes in the budget, and those would need to be approved. They're called budget amendments, and those will need to be approved, say that's the beginning of March. We can decide to present it in the beginning of March, and then you could vote on it in April, or however you want to do it. But at that point, like I was just trying to go through with Elizabeth, I know there's several things in here. There's some training that will need to happen, because there's things in here that when you do modified accrual accounting, most things don't carry over. So if there's projects that are put in there that aren't going to happen, they're just going to flow through to your revenue for the year. And it looks like your goal is to break even and or to save money for future things. But the way that you do that is through assignments of your fund balance for projects that are in your future. And Carol had put in this implementation operation 7-10 of $35,000. For her, that was to cover expenses for the months that you don't have any revenue coming in from property taxes and the TIF. So, but that doesn't work because that's actually the next fiscal year. So it actually is supposed to be an allocation of the fund balance, saying that that money is set aside to pay bills during those months. So the whole thing, the whole budget will get realigned in the appropriate way. The changes that need to be made by account will be presented by Elizabeth and or I, and then it'll be approved by the board. And then that way you will fully be back in alignment with the requirements of governmental spending.
And if any of you are interested, I might just send it even if only a couple people want it, but I'd be happy to send you, like, for example, the board packet for RDL. You know, you'll see how she actually does her reporting, and how clear and simple it is. So there was no way for this to happen this month. I just got into Huntington today, and to be able to have access to those accounts, and so Carol's now off of those accounts. You know, she got a drive twice and it's corrupted. I mean, it's just, and then showing up to appointments and nobody's there. I mean, it's been a little arduous. We have the boxes, we have all the files, we finally have all those, and we'll start to go through those. So this is definitely not what it will look like, but it is definitely better than what you've had before because of some modifications. So, and I do feel that Carla's the perfect person to help with the establishing next year's budget. And really understanding how that should be done. I think that is she's a wealth of knowledge, and we'd be foolish not to use that. Because I don't have those expertise, I don't have that knowledge, so.
No, great job. I mean, and these are just things going forward, because that's really been one of the things. We talk often about, oh, let's just take funds from here and put them there, which is all well and good, but I gotta make sure that that's recorded and that we're aware of it and we don't spend it twice.
That makes Carla really nervous, so we'll get that fixed.
All right, great, thank you. Moving on, we have Elizabeth Miller with the DDA Executive Director's Report. Elizabeth?
Did you notice it's not 3 or 4 pages this month? I tried to, yeah, some of the, especially the financial stuff, I didn't have to put any of that in because of what Carla's doing. But setting up shop, we're still working on that. Temporary office space has been created for Carla, so she can be upstairs when she's doing that. She likes to be there. Tomorrow morning, we're going to have remote access to both of the printers at the village on the DDA computer, because that has never been done. And so she'll be able to print without having to have a long cord going across the room. So that'll happen. All the file boxes, as I mentioned, have been brought over, and they'll be processed in the coming months. I'm going to need to know what direction the board would like to go to proceed with all of these files and whatnot. I believe 7 years need to be kept by law, but as far as the rest of it, I'm not sure what everybody wants to do. There's binders everywhere, and there's probably 30 binders that are on shelves, and I haven't even had time to delve into those. I imagine there's just a lot of old data, which is there. Some of it probably is helpful. Microsoft Office Suite has been added to both computers, and a standing desk and monitors have been purchased to make workflow a lot better. As we develop more systems, access to multiple spreadsheets at times will be vital. The primary office space configuration has been completed. We've repurposed many things. I've made rugs out of tiles like this and duct tape in it, where it looks pretty good, actually. So I'm just trying to modify things that we have. I know it sounds bad, but trying to modify what we have at little or no cost. So some things that do cost a little bit more, I mean, there's a reason for it. So I'm quite the spendthrift. So if I spend money on something, there's a good reason for it. Downtown beautification, the holiday decor, I noticed it just came down a couple days ago. There were a few issues with some of the buildings not having anchor points to attach lighting that have been done in previous years. Some discussion in the coming months. We need to decide what 2022 is going to look like. It sounds like the Geroches will not be interested in doing that in the future. So just within the next few months, we're going to have to really talk about this, either in committee or at the board level, how we're going to proceed with Christmas 2022. Our snowman event planning is underway. I sent an email out late this afternoon regarding, we're looking at calling it either a winter fest or a snow fest for February 26th, and looking to have all the snowmen done by the 12th of February, and we've got some contest ideas out there and whatnot, so interested in your guys' ideas on that.
Really quick, Elizabeth, are we gonna form a subcommittee for that? Because I know in the past, that's for like any sort of event planning or doing that. Is that something that you and Kelly were working on?
Yes,
Together, or-
yeah, so there's gonna be a meeting on Thursday at 10 o'clock, at the DDA office upstairs. So anybody that can come to that, including business owners and community members, if they wanna come to that, they can be there. So as far as I think because this is such a last minute thing,
Yeah.
I haven't had direction on that, so,
Okay.
but if that's the direction you wanna go on that for future events, for sure.
So is that meeting though, is that something that's gonna be posted? Because we can't have if we have all the DDA members there, it's technically
Yeah. We're gonna post it as
Okay.
one joint consortium workshop meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
great.
I chatted with Catherine about that today.
Okay,
Saying, do
perfect.
we have to do it individually by board? And she said, no, I think we can just list the boards, make one meeting, just note that, the time, the place, and, so,
Well,
yes.
it's not necessarily pulling other boards into it, it's,
Just that
business
there'll be
leaders.
a quorum.
Yes.
We didn't want any Open Meetings Act issues with having quorums of the boards present all at once. So we're just gonna post it as one workshop, and it should suffice.
For the.
The
for
parliamentary meeting.
Oh, no,
right?
no, we're talking
Oh,
about
I'm so
that.
sorry. I'm so
That's
sorry.
okay, we're talking about the Winterfest.
Oh, gotcha.
Yes, yeah,
So
that's
but
why I'm
if-
like, wait, what?
But if
Right.
all the board members are present,
Mhm.
it would have to be posted ahead of time, because technically we'd have a quorum of the board.
Sure.
And then
Yes.
if decisions we made.
So I can do that tomorrow, afternoon. We need
Okay.
18, for a special meeting, you have to have 18-hour notice, so we can definitely get that up tomorrow.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
just
no
if there's a
problem.
quorum, that way there's no
Yeah, you are
complications.
correct.
Perfect. Our Story Walk project, the first installation of our Story Walk was a huge success. It was fun to see all the photo submissions of our readers and their families. We received a lot of phone and email inquiries about how to participate. Claire LaPiccolo and her staff at Romeo District Library did a beautiful job. The business community is very interested in the program continuing. And as I mentioned in another part of my board packet, I believe, that the next one will go in as part of our Winterfest for February. So there'll be a snowman themed one and whatnot. And it was also featured on Live in the D, which was pretty exciting. Board member interviews, I just have 2 left to do. I would like to have those done within the next week. I'd like to be able to have a report on that for February's meeting, just so that you all know just kind of what the joint communication has been on that and what the direction is moving forward. Michigan Downtown Association, in my downtown podcast, I shared one with Zach last week that.
Yeah, it was a good listen.
Which really, it's very, very important. They're short too. Most of them are, 30 minutes or less. But it's a really valuable resource, and I intend to share it also with the Central Business District community too, because I think when business owners can say, oh, I didn't know other DDAs or other downtowns were doing this, it can really get them excited about maybe their involvement and how we move forward. Continue education, I mentioned last week that I had one there. And then I included on the second page the training series that's going to be starting up, and I haven't heard from them yet when that's going to be, but I imagine it's going to be within the next couple of weeks. So that's that. The insurance policies and bonds, they are all effective and paid in full, so you all are completely insured. These policies will be added to an annual calendar to ensure renewal in a timely manner. One of the things that our newest board member mentioned is there a schedule? And I said I'm working on making sure that we have a schedule of when things are coming up so that nothing falls through the cracks again. And then the last thing was just going over current bylaws, policies, procedures, DDA establishments, ordinance, things like that, and that's going to be discussed under new business. Is there any questions on that?
I don't have any questions, but I would just like to pay you a compliment if I could.
Sure.
It's been
absolutely, go for it.
Absolutely. It's been really enjoyable having Elizabeth in the office, and I must compliment her on her resourcefulness. As she indicated, when we're looking at reconfiguring that space upstairs, and she literally was having her chair roll around on a piece of cardboard to protect the hardwood because some of the joints between the flooring were coming up. It's a really old building. And I found a box of carpet squares, the samples. They're not even all the same color. But immediately she's like, oh, I think we can tape these together and I can use that as a rug over here, right? Or she'll be downstairs and say, hey, there's a 3-bin little filing system. Is anybody using that? Can I have that, right? So instead of, necessarily going out to Office Max and purchasing those things, she's really putting her resourcefulness to good use. And so it's good, so.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. Greg, did you have?
No, there's a couple things on here, I think we'll get to them, not from that report. Thank you.
Great. Moving on, number 8, we have funding requests, but there are none. 9, committee reports, there are none, so we'll move on to unfinished business. And first up is the pedestrian crosswalk project update.
Well, we happen to have, Paul O'Meara is already here, and he's gonna be talking about the parking study, but would you like to speak to that one too, since you're here? I kind of put me on the spot, sorry.
Okay.
Does she feel that?
We're actually, hi, I'm Paul O'Meara from Real Professional Services, and we're working on the plans and bidding specifications for the pedestrian crosswalk project. We are working with MDOT because they will be issuing the bids to the bidders, and our target is actually later this week to finish up the final plans and submit them to MDOT. And then there's 2 other little pieces, one being the easements, and the other, one of the permitting issues with environmental protection, because there's many different things that with federal dollars you have to line up correctly. So those 2 things are still hanging out there, but I think they'll be resolved in the next couple weeks. And then we should get the green light to get it out for bid. And I don't have the calendar in front of me because I wasn't prepared to talk about this, but I think at the latest we'll be opening up bids in, I don't want to say for sure, but either April or May for sure. And then the contractor will need some time to get all his paperwork and subcontractors in order, and then they'll be out there working on it. But our goal is definitely to finish before Labor Day, if I'm not mistaken, because I know you don't want us in there then.
No, definitely not there for Peach Fest, for
Right.
sure. There was some complicated requirement changes that were necessary, and that Christine and I both were working on, and the property owners, seven of them that needed these construction easements, and we jumped through hoops to get all this stuff done, and then found out, oh, actually, now we don't need that. So it's a little, not on Paul. He worked over the holidays. We all 3 of us did, just trying to get this, and then we're like, oh no, the first things you submitted were fine. We're like, oh. So, but we're learning. So, but Paul's been really great to work with. So, are there any questions about the project? No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from a perspective of how we're going to, is there any plan for how we're going to let the business community know that when are these dates happening and
Yes.
what to expect? So we do have that in the works?
Yeah, we have that in
Right.
the works. So when I first started, I think it was within the first couple of weeks, Christine and I met with the police chief, with Paul, who else was sitting there? Feels like there was
DPW, too.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
DPW was there as well. And so part of what we're gonna be doing with our new website, and part of what Sean O'Brien, who is from Think Street Media, when we put out a notice, it will go to all of our social media, it will go straight to the schools, it will go straight to the businesses, and so I'm working on the database for all of the which is one of my benchmark goals, 6-month benchmark goals that you set for me. So once we have all that in there, it's gonna be, then we'll be able to push this information through, and that's in the next 2 months. That's what I've got a lot of work to do.
Sure.
To that end, but yes, that will be communicated. It will be overly communicated, actually.
I'm even wondering, just like temporary signage on the sidewalk or something like that.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yep, yeah, you can rent the changing message boards that flash so the traffic can read it as they're driving by.
Perfect.
And another thing I would recommend is when you do send out the notices in advance to collect email addresses from business owners if they want to be kind of in the loop. Because with construction, as you probably know, things can change fast, weather impacts the schedule, and the contractor really won't give us much advance notice, maybe just a day or 2 as to when they're going to move into the next area of work and potentially close that particular sidewalk temporarily. So we won't know much in advance ourselves, but it's good to be able to get that word out through the email blast to everybody so that they're hearing it as fast as we know it.
Great.
What we didn't want to do is post too much information too
early.
early, because
Yeah.
then, if we put those flashing signs out there now, but we're not really going to do any work until May,
Oh, sure.
people are going to forget
Yeah,
that they
sure.
saw that in January. So it's all
Great.
sort of going to be
Great.
part of our plan, yeah.
Great.
And once a bid has been accepted and we know who the contractor is, Paula and I have discussed having some boards put up, that one that can be in the village hall. We could have some, they could be up during the village council meetings. We're talking about doing a town hall meeting where this is part of another discussion item, right? And so that'll be a
Sure.
big visual, people will see what's coming in. So yes, good question, we will do
Great.
that. In regards to, you ready to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, the parking study update, we have, Paul brought some bigger maps with him, right?
Yep, I do have them there,
Okay,
the
great.
paper version, yep.
So he's made some modifications to that a little bit, so go ahead, take it.
Well, did you show them the individual ones before?
Yes, so in last month's board packet, they were on separate pages, and so you'd have to kind of piece them together. And
Mhm.
when I was trying to piece them together, we noticed one of them was off scale just a little bit, so they corrected it. The coloring of the parking spaces was blended too much with the greenery and whatnot, and so they enhanced those and then added the street names so that they were easier to read. So now it's a much, this is the one you're gonna want,
Okay.
is what we have now. And
Yes, I've sent it out electronically, so you could get that as well if you wanted it on your computer, but it'll be pulled into just one view for the entire district that shows the boundary of the streets and the little rectangles for each parking place.
Has there been any, not exactly on this, but the surveys we talked about, has there been any progress or discussion on knowing exactly where these property lines are? Or I think, were you not
Well, I
gonna
don't
work
think
on
they
it?
were, no, that wasn't part of
that wasn't part of
the
this.
proposal.
But who was gonna get us, was it their firm was gonna quote us on a stake survey, was it not?
I think
That was the
in
original quote, and that the price was way high, and the board said, we don't wanna pay for that. We just want the pared down, what's the minimum version that they were willing to support, which is the work that Paul has, that scope of work changed. Yeah, the original parking study, which included a stake survey.
But we did try to identify who owns what on the various parcels and try to put them into the three categories of either being public right-of-way or private or something else that the village owns. And I understand there might be a couple errors on that we're still trying to hammer through, but we'll change those if needed.
How did you determine who owns it? Not, what do you rely on or depend on for information for that?
I relied on the Macomb County's GIS property tax map,
Okay.
which all of us can look at.
And then, will you kind of serve as a general contractor for this whole project, your firm? Is that,
Yeah, we're the consulting engineer, just the little parking map project that you're referring to.
well, I'm sorry, the crosswalks?
Oh, yeah, that's a different contract, yep. So
And will
we'll be
that
the
be-
engineer, and then we put together the bidding documents, and then MDOT actually hires the contractor that does the real construction.
Will we have a say in the contract about finish dates and penalties if they don't make it by Labor
Yes.
Day and to this sort of thing? Who will do that then? Who will push that information in there for those folks?
We put together the actual specifications, which actually should be just about nailed down here real soon, and then we'll have dates in there that there's a deadline. But I have to maybe tweak those a little bit depending on when the actual bid goes out.
And there'll typically be a penalty in there if we don't meet that deadline, is there gonna?
Yep, yeah, MDOT will have a specific penalty per day if you miss that deadline.
And who do they pay that to?
Well, they just take the money off of what the contractor would have been paid. So MDOT just holds the money.
And that's really our money, right? I mean, we're giving it to them to pay them, right?
Well-
Part of that is from the grant, so it's, right, it's a little more gray than that.
Yeah,
Well,
but
But the
Yeah,
village, you
it's-
guys ponied up for one of the crosswalks, or there was some discussion on that a year ago
There
or
was an
more.
additional one that
Yeah,
we
additional,
weren't
right.
funding on our end.
But the village is putting money in directly, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
along with the DDA. It's
Right,
Putting in
so-
money directly.
I'm just curious if there'll be some sort of formula that we at least get credited somehow, should they fall into all these, the way everything's taken, nowadays, we could have, downtown tore up all through Labor Day because they had their own problems.
Right. I have not seen that contract.
Okay.
As Paul indicated, he's
Yeah.
still drafting it, so
Yeah.
once I do, then of course, village legal counsel will review it
Yeah.
as Mr. Clark does all contracts, and
Sure. All right.
Yeah, I don't envision this project being one that would be a big delay or like some strange thing that they can't acquire because it's of a materials issue.
You said that in Boston too, right, for the
Yeah.
big dig?
Yeah.
So we're gonna get that updated parking study sent to the map that Paul was referring to. That was already sent to you, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Okay, and you're gonna send it out to the rest of the board?
This?
No, I thought it was a map. Wasn't
Oh,
it
yes,
a
the new map, yes,
Okay,
correct, yeah.
That's gonna go out.
So
Okay.
who sees the final drawings and artwork and presentation of what the crosswalks will actually look like? Has that already been like totally determined, the surfaces for the marking? I know we talked about a lot of that in the past, there was various options and such, and it's sort of been months, so it's kind of fuzzy where it got left.
That was
off.
all described specifically in the grant application. We had to submit all of that, all those designs in documentation, so yes, it's already been done.
And that we submitting it was you and some folks that put eyes on it for the final touch?
Yeah, well, the DDA board saw it and then approved its portion, and then the village council did it as well, and then
I think you guys approved this back in May, didn't you?
I don't know the date, I'd have to go
Isn't
back
this
and look,
Longer
but
ago.
Yeah, it's been longer. That, as I recall, there are more general concepts, not specifically to scale exactly this, but I could be wrong. It's been many, many months, so.
Well, that information is available. We can certainly, I mean, if you want to see it, it's
I
available.
suppose it's somewhere that we can look at the exact details of what it's gonna look. I'm
I
sort
can
of
send that
curious
back out again, I
if
got
you're gonna
that.
be overhead markings, if there's just gonna be side, what all that is gonna be, because
Well, there's, the main elements are tearing out the actual concrete so that you've got a real ramp that meets today's standards. And then there's the crosswalk, which is going to be outlined with white. And then the inside will be just a standard brick pattern, nothing unique about it. But
stamped
and then
concrete then in there, or would that be asphalt?
no, it's actually a painted coating that goes on the pavement, and then it's got like a stencil so that it looks
Yeah.
like brick. So the first coat is the white, which would be like your masonry look, and then the red or whatever color we finalize it to be, would be painted on secondly. So it's a two painted coat. And if you ever look at M59 around Lakeside Mall, there's a lot of it there, the same
Okay.
material.
And then how does it mark on the side for a,
And then we've got the standard pedestrian symbol, yellow diamond signs that'll be like 30 inches high, that'll have the arrow pointing down towards the crosswalk to encourage you to slow down.
so no stopping of traffic then?
No.
Well, we tried doing that last week. So Paul and I worked pretty hard on that over the last week or so, even before Christmas. There was a vendor that I met at the Michigan Downtown Association conference, and they have these, what are they called? I know there's an acronym for them, but they're basically like these rapid fire.
Rapidly flashing beacon
Yes,
signs.
there's a button you push, just like you would do at the Four Corners. And so when I got a quote from this vendor, and he's like, that's way less than what we were quoting, that's why we never put them in. We were all excited about presenting this to you guys to say, hey, what if we use this, the funding that was gonna go into lighting, into doing this? Because it just makes sense to have crosswalks where people can actually cross safely across the street. Then Paul contacted, you explain that part, because
I contacted MDOT because the whole contract's going through them, so obviously we have to meet their standards as well. And was notified, I put one of these in myself like 3 years ago, so I wasn't aware of this because this just happened last year, that MDOT prepared a new guideline that's like probably 60 pages long that describes what all the conditions you need to do to go through to have these installed, because they don't want them to be put in too frequently, and if we had put them in all 5 intersections, that probably may have been too much to have these flashing beacons going on and off all throughout downtown. They're supposed to be typically more in a high-speed environment where, say you've got a school crossing and a faster speeding road, to try to draw attention more farther away that there's really something here that you need to slow down for and stop. But in a 25-mile-an-hour zone, theoretically, they should already be being careful.
but in order for them to approve the installation of these lights where you can have a push button, you have to do a traffic study on the crosswalks, but we can't do a traffic study because the crosswalks don't exist. So in order for us to do that, they have to be installed, the project has to be done, then do a study to see if they'll eventually allow us to put those in. But in the meantime, they'll be your standard signs with the arrows pointing down. So that's what we can't do any more than that.
Sure. Does anybody else have any questions for Paul while he's here? No? Paul, thank you for your time.
All right,
Appreciate
sure.
it.
Yes, thank you. So in regards, more regarding to the parking study, I went to the planning commission meeting last week. I already have 2 members on that's willing to be part of a committee to look at this information that you all paid for.
Sure.
Say, how can we come up with unified signage throughout the village? What are some things? I've talked to Mr. Parker about this as well. So that's something that I'm working on. Again, there were some notes from my last meeting that I entered back in here under unfinished business. So if any of you want, I hope to get at least 2 or 3 of you on that committee because it's important that your input is there. So volunteers, you can tell me later.
Carla, I just want, you're not obligated to stay. You are free to leave, right? Or am I wrong?
I would like to leave, but
It's fine, we'll talk about that later.
let
No
me
problem.
just give you
Thank you.
my summary.
Okay.
Paul, you can call us with the score of the game.
You got 10 minutes yet, Bill?
Thank
We're
you.
not gonna be on here in 10 minutes.
No, we're not. I was just being, yeah.
You're being kind.
I know. Okay. Okay, thank you. Talk to you tomorrow. Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, moving on, we have an update on the website development.
Yes. So the monthly report from Think Street was sent out to you guys last week, as requested at last month's meeting. Once the website is built and goes live, more detail will be present, and the following steps are currently in the works. The wireframe is getting closer to completion. The board of directors and staff page will be updated with email addresses, individual photos, along with a group photo. In sometime in early 2022, before a board meeting, we'll have some professional pictures taken by a local photographer who's agreed to do that at no cost. Next week, we will launch a photo contest for submissions of photos of downtown Romeo in all 4 seasons. Winners will be given full credit for their photos to be used throughout the year on our new website. Think Street Media is has already sent me actually the release form for legal purposes on that. I just have to make some modifications that fit it for the Romeo DDA on that. And then we are, Megan and I are struggling to get the Instagram and Facebook thing to link up. At some point, I will find Mark Zuckerberg's phone number and I'll just call him directly to see how we do that. But I'll plan to spend some time on that as time allows.
Yeah.
So.
She is on Instagram now, though, so.
I am.
Changed the password so that she could just go in, so that there was no need to link. I
Haven't
just said
changed
just
it yet.
Open the password.
I haven't changed the password yet, it's still yours.
No, I did it.
Oh, you did, okay, all right. So it's been one of those, that there's, as you can see, there's a lot going on, so that's not exactly a top priority, but we're hoping to have that done by the time the website launches, so it all is seamless, so.
Great. Next up, we have appointment of treasurer. Now, this says recommendation by board chair. I guess by default, I am the board chair for tonight, even though I'm just the vice chair. But I don't know if anybody showed interest in the position or is interested in the position that needs to be filled that was left vacant by Carol on the board. We do need a treasurer. Is there any insight, or am I making a recommendation? Because I was not prepared to make a recommendation.
A few people were
today.
approached and asked about that. I know Kelly was reaching out to someone on the board. I don't know what the progress has been on that. I would say, if you're interested in my thoughts,
Mhm.
Based on how your bylaws are currently written, I mean, it looks kind of scary what a treasurer is responsible for, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I don't
Because
disagree.
they're huge responsibilities based on the bylaws. However, that is not how most boards operate. You don't actually hand over all of the files to the actual treasurer, and the actual treasurer isn't going and physically making the deposits, but that's the way it's written.
Mhm.
So I could see why that is a little terrifying if someone were to think, oh, I don't want those responsibilities. You could punt it another month, it's not gonna keep us from not doing anything, but at some point, someone has to step up to the plate and take the position based on.
Can those
your-
bylaws be modified? Because it's not realistic to, unless somebody on this board, A, has that professional expertise, kind of been down that road, and B, the willingness to do it at really zero cost. And it's not a reasonable request, I don't think. So what's involved in modifying bylaws on the board, does anybody know? And then have a outsource doing this and a treasurer that sort of reports the data?
So many DDAs, those are good questions, Greg. Many DDAs don't even have a treasurer because their village or their city treasurer, the funds are going through them, and then they have an accountant or bookkeeper. So there are some that don't have an actual treasurer on the board. Bylaws are not difficult to change. You look to see what other community has a similar bylaws that will align with what your goals and your objectives are, and you would adopt them with your own name in there, and you change them. I say it's that simple, but it will take hours to do it, but it's doable.
So
very doable.
are we in any sort of violation by leaving that seat vacant for the time being? Because we have no. Nope.
You're meeting the requirements because you have a qualified individual who's doing the work.
Okay.
And ultimately, the board's responsibility to approve the financials, and we do that on a monthly basis.
Who's signing the checks? What two people?
I believe right now it's Kelly and myself, right?
Yeah, so
Why is
now
that?
since Carol's not on the accounts anymore, it would be the both of you, and that's actually something I have to talk to you guys about. That is something, one of Carla's recommendations is, any other boards that she's worked with, the director actually is one of the check signers as well. And one of you also need to be on the accounts, because currently I'm the only one on the account, and I'm not comfortable with that.
There should be two,
Correct.
period, end of.
Right.
There's
That's
two
why I'm
different
talking
issues
about
here.
it,
You're
yeah.
talking maybe signer, she's talking about she's the actually only person on the account.
I understand that, Greg,
Okay,
but
yeah.
most checks for places like this come out with two signatures on them.
Absolutely, but did you hear what she said?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, different thing, but I believe we need to fix that.
The bank does not require two signatures.
No, but we
The
can require
institution
two. Right.
does, but it's not caught by anything unless you bring a check physically into the bank
Right.
to verify who the two check signers are, because everything's automated. But the two-step process to make sure you have proper procedures financially in place is to have two people actually signing the checks.
And I think-
There is, and I'll correct you because I've been down this road. The banks do in fact have a quality control check. If you say two people have to sign it, those checks cannot be cashed without two people. on
Well,
it.
I tell you, for the last 4 years, every one of your checks
Yeah,
have
but there
gone
was-
through
there
with
was no
two signed.
requirement. No, there was never a requirement. We can tell them this, you can put on the check, it takes two signatures. I mean, that's,
Did we require two or not?
There were
Did
two,
we?
technically, there were two signatures. The signatures actually appeared on the checks, but there was only one person's name.
gotcha, I understand. It's,
With
Right.
cards on file.
Correct, or any,
I understand what both of you are saying, but it's, if the check says two signatures required, then two signatures are required on that check, period, end of statement.
which there were,
Okay.
yeah, but,
Well, I think it gives us a bit of protection if a check is cashed with one person's signature and it's supposed to have two, even if the bank did it bogusly or inadvertently, so.
well, I think if a second signature hadn't appeared on the checks, then it would have raised concerns. But the signatures were there, but on the back end, there was never a second signer, actually.
The paperwork
named on
wasn't
the account.
filed.
And if somebody walked away with $100,000, it's shame on the bank. Because if the
Right.
check says two signatures are required and it's not there and they cash the thing, that's their problem then.
But well, let's have this discussion and.
No, I mean, it's.
Well, I'm
and
telling,
not saying
Bill, I'm
it's ever
telling,
gonna
no, I know,
happen.
but I'm telling you that the signatures appeared on the checks. So there was never an issue that one person was signing checks. Two people were signing checks, whether that was Carol and myself or Carol and Kelly after, but those people who were signing the checks were never put on the account as,
I got you.
as being
As
on the
signatories.
account, as signatures on the account. So therein lies your mess. And we were led to believe that we weren't. So, I mean, there's,
So you're saying y'all were signing checks and you weren't really signers, is that?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's
All right.
correct.
Yeah, fix it. I mean, it's just,
So now you know where the time has been spent.
I don't doubt it one bit. I told you from the beginning, you know, if you need more time, you just gotta ask for it and get paid for it.
I don't consider it unusual to receive a check where it's perfectly obvious that the one signature's been printed. I literally see those all the time. Where it's.
right, it's some sort of automated
Yeah.
process.
And the other one's actually an ink signature on it.
Sure, but they are, right. So, in regards to the appointment of the treasurer position, let's update our policies and make it a less scary position for somebody who is volunteering on
Why don't
this
we just
board.
eliminate it?
Yeah,
That's-
Or if that's what we decide,
If
either
you're
way,
just
either
gonna
way.
be a figurehead and
That's
you're really
fine,
not
either
gonna
way,
do
we have to
anything,
update
then
that
get
on the
rid of it.
bylaws.
Yeah, what would we give the treasurer, what would be the responsibilities at that point then?
Right, and if it means just removing that.
oversight.
Well,
that-
let's back up, but then somebody at the village somebody has to do this work.
But
that's
what
the-
we're hiring a bookkeeper
That's-
for.
Right,
Okay, so, but you're suggesting we'd hire a bookkeeper to do it then,
Yeah.
rather than having the village folks do it?
it's no.
It could be the same person. Greg.
Okay, I think we're talking about two different
Yeah, there's
things.
a treasurer on that it's more of it's a figurehead on the board more so than an actual.
I understand.
So it's no different than, Megan is our secretary.
But who's gonna do our deposits and all this stuff that they're supposed to?
It will probably end up being our director, but we'll have to update the bylaws at that point, which would mean the director would become, she would be on the account, and then then probably the chair, Kelly, would be another signer on the account, or possibly myself as well, if,
Right.
just in case.
And we're gonna
Kelly-
hire someone to do these books on a month-to-month basis then?
Correct. So, moving on.
I will look at some other bylaws that are out there for DDAs, and as far as what they have. And your bylaws are pretty complicated. They can be much more simple. But looking at the whole thing, instead of modifying them 1 month and then doing it again in 3 months later, I can look at that I'll try to look on that between now and next month. But punting that to another month, you're not in any violation of anything.
Okay.
But one thing that we do need, since we're under we're under the section, I suppose it should go under, I'm wondering if you want to make a motion for the addition of adding the board president to the bank accounts.
Should we just wait until we get to our, because I
I'm
feel like
not,
now
I'm
we're
not
almost.
comfortable being the only person on those accounts. And
Well,
the only.
I thought Kelly and myself were gonna be.
Your
on the
signatures, your signatures on the accounts, but you don't
Okay.
have access to anything else on there. And right now, I'm the only one with access, and I'm not comfortable with that. So someone else needs to be on the accounts.
Who had the access before you?
Carol,
Again, only one person?
correct.
Which is
I-
insane.
And when you say access, you mean ability to check banking information, review accounts and
Check
these types of?
banking, make deposits, make withdrawals, transfer
Well, anybody can make
money.
deposits, but withdrawals will require 2 signatures. We're
It
kind of.
does not.
But that's where we want to go with this. You're talking about having 2 people listed at the bank as being on the account.
Having access to anything.
Anything, information or funds, there's a difference.
That's true, there is a difference.
Right.
I don't want to be the only one having access to the funds.
Well, and you shouldn't, I'm not sure the director has to have access to the funds. It seems to me we should have 2 check signers out here, and somebody presents a check, and they both sign off on it.
I don't mind taking on that responsibility if the board approves it. I mean, I am on all of the village accounts, right? And as the board liaison, I don't have a problem not being a signer. I'm not looking to be a signer, but to access the account if there's a, 2-factor authorization.
And that's
right?
helpful from.
I have the dongle.
Because the
right.
funds are coming through the village too, for them to be able to see that.
That
So
would
do you
make
need a
sense.
motion for this? make a motion that the president have the, give me the wordings here.
Okay, I have the language, sure. So how about this? Motion to approve addition of President Malzahn to be added to current bank accounts.
I'll make that motion.
Should we word it so it's just village president instead of one individual, because then it can
I
carry
like that a
over?
lot better.
Okay, let me redo that then. Okay, motion to approve addition of village president to be added to current bank accounts. To bank accounts, period.
To the
How's that?
because it'll have to be the current.
To bank accounts.
And I think you gotta quantify a little bit, don't you, what added to means? When you say added to bank accounts, just so everybody's clear. You know, it's added to for administrative purposes, not signing, not access to funds, these types of things, right? I mean, we need to clarify, that's not uncommon for a bookkeeper to have access to everything, but not necessarily access to the funds.
Okay, so motion to
Correct.
approve addition of village president to be added to current bank accounts for administrative purposes.
Our bookkeeper, Tim Sadowski, has access to the accounts,
Right.
but he doesn't have the authority to move any of the monies,
Right,
right?
that's-
That's
yeah.
limited to the 3 elected officials, the
Yeah.
treasurer, the clerk, and the president at this point,
Absolutely.
right, yes.
And Carla will not be on that
Right.
for that. She'll have
Rebecca.
access to them
Yeah.
to view them, download documents,
Yes.
all that type of stuff, but not at physically move. And then, so, since I'm on the account, I have to authorize who gets to do what on there, because I'm the primary on the accounts. Just so you all are aware of that.
Okay, so do we have a second for Parker's motion?
Support.
Second by Poznanski. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, under unfinished business, we have the downtown social district. And Elizabeth, you're looking for some guidance on this or some direction?
Yes, I just have to put that down. Where are we at? Yeah, so, after presenting the preliminary information to you, looking for some direction. Is this something that you're interested in pursuing? Is this something, what do you all think of it? Have you given any more thought to that, or?
I mean, personally, I think it's an interesting idea, and I believe we had said somebody had reached out to, Glenn, was it Glenn that you reached out to, or did you talk to
Both,
Caleb or
both, I
Nicole?
did not speak to, well, at the time, it was, the Cheka still owned it, but certainly invited them to see if they were interested in doing something in that quadrant.
Yeah.
What was their response?
There was too many limitations with the liquor control, as far as, everything had to be labeled, whose product they're actually serving, with cups and that sort of stuff, that at the time they didn't think it was beneficial to look at making a whole district.
And that was just recently you had that conversation?
That was during COVID,
Right.
right? So
Oh.
I would say the summer of 2020,
Right.
right? When social district, or when drinking districts sort of came about. We talked about maybe doing that in the park, but it has to run adjacent to somebody's liquor license. So it's not a different liquor license. The village doesn't own the liquor license. It's still the responsibility of that license holder. And so there was some logistic issues with that.
I mean, if the bars aren't in on it, then there's no
Right.
point in us trying to pursue it. So I think it kind of ends with them if somebody wants to.
Yeah, if they want to bring it up, or
Yeah.
if there's
Let
some.
them bring it to us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Perfect. And maybe maybe a couple of years from now, once all these other things are well established and, and we're looking for another thing to enhance the downtown area, that might be worth pursuing then. So, all right, it will come off of the unfinished business then.
All right, then we're gonna move on to the bookkeeper job posting.
So I wasn't able to post that because there was no rate of pay or a start date, so that needs to be established before that posting can be made. I would recommend that it gets tabled until we get a little bit more clarity and direction from our accountant in regards to that. Otherwise, we're putting a posting out there without really knowing.
I think we got a general idea, government, someone that wants to do bookkeeping with government entities experience, and somebody can tell us a market rate for what we have to pay to do that. But this may not happen overnight, and she's only got, what, 2 more months or so, roughly?
3 months.
3 months. I think there's no reason not to start bringing people in and getting their resumes and such. I mean, it's not like it's their full-time.
The problem that you'll find, Greg, is that government accounting is way different than what you would do for your private business. And finding somebody with government accounting experience is where the challenge is, which is why.
That's why I say we gotta
right, our
promote it now.
bookkeeper, right, works for 5 different municipalities
Yeah.
because no one has that sort of specialty.
And that's why I don't think we should wait to post it. We should start searching for that person, because it will take a little bit of time, maybe.
You said
But didn't we-
works for 5 different businesses?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't we mention
I
possibly
think it could be
being able to
4.
run it through the
Don't
village
hold me to
though?
the 5, but yes, several.
If we could run it through the village, then that.
Well, we should
Right.
interview that bookkeeper, have that bookkeeper count.
Well, and Tim already did give his bid, basically,
Okay.
when we looked at those 2 figures the last month. And he was significantly more than what Carla wanted, so obviously we opted to employ her. Perhaps Tim would look at it. I also had a conversation with Elizabeth. You know, what does it look like if our AP clerk does that work, cuts payroll, right, does the taxes? And would we submit some sort of bid, I guess, if the village did that function? What would the charge back be to the DDA? So we're sort of investigating that.
And
Which
not
would
only-
mirror other DDAs, and I
Right.
need more time to find out.
Figure out what are they
Well,
paying,
and
right?
not,
Yeah.
not only that though, Greg, Carla stated that by the time she's done, she's gonna make it a heck of a lot easier for anybody else to walk in, and
Mhm.
it's gonna be, a lot of the hard work is gonna be done, so until we know what she's leaving us with, it may be difficult to get an accurate proposal based on.
But if
what we're
somebody
doing.
submitted a proposal 3 weeks from now, we wouldn't, by the time we looked at it here, had a meeting, looked at it, talked about it, I just don't see delaying it another 30 days just to start the process of looking. Maybe nobody will submit their,
If you're listening between the lines, we already are looking at it. The village is in fact going to give, unless I'm misunderstanding, they're working out, finding out what it would cost to have.
Right, and do we have the staff that has the hours that can accommodate the extra work,
Yeah.
taking that on?
so we just wait 30 days and find out and say, okay, let's start over. Whatever, it doesn't matter to me, I just don't know what the delay is, we can get going on it, because,
I think what we're finding is that there are best practices that are followed within most DDAs, and so I'm trying to get familiar with what some of those other best practices are, and this seems to be one of them. And so I just found most of this information out on Thursday. So with everything else happening, it's hard to jump into each thing
Well, and
with the time allowed.
in all honesty, I gotta imagine they're running it through their municipality because it's quite expensive for a DDA to cover these costs and budget for that on their own, because it's, if you go back and look at the original quote we got, I think it was significantly higher than what Carla was proposing, so it's like, that could drain a lot of our budget if we have to look outside of the village to try to get those services done.
I just didn't think there's only one Carla in America, that's all. I just thought maybe there might be somebody else out there kind of maybe interested in it. I don't, doesn't, whatever, that's fine. I just, you know, as to Christine's point, sometimes it takes time to find these people, and if we can't do a deal with our village person, what's his name, I'm sorry?
Well, Tim.
Tim.
Well, and it's not just Tim, right? It's the other staff members.
Right.
Because somebody still needs to do her payroll checks. Somebody
Right.
still needs to submit, you know, the unemployment taxes. Somebody still, you know, needs to do that work. And that's, you know, you need software to do that. The village obviously has the BSNA, but might require a separate module to do the DDA. That's sort of all the questions that popped up during our conversations, and we just haven't had enough time really to get an answer to that versus, you know, buying a copy of QuickBooks
Yeah.
and a desktop system that's going to operate out of. I don't know, but we're working on that as best we can.
Well,
Unfortunately, the holidays, I think, you know, worked against us
No,
with
I
that
get
timing.
it. You know, Elizabeth's point was, I think you were looking for hourly rate and then something else that was prohibiting from posting it. So hourly rate should be, you know, market, we could figure that out and what else were you looking for? Exact job
And
description?
and a start date. We have a job description, actually, that we got from the village,
Yeah.
from the village accountant.
Start date,
But I
same.
tried to post it, and Catherine, the village clerk, was going to help with that. And she's like, well, if you don't have a start date and you don't have a salary rate, you can't post it. So that's what stopped us from posting it before.
Well, start date can be to be decided, or March 1st, or whatever. I mean, I just think we're gonna lose 30 days for no reason, but that.
I mean, Greg, you can make a motion.
I'll make a motion, we post the position.
With a start date and the dollar rate to be negotiable.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Bill.
Or didn't you say you have to include a start date in a?
You don't have to, that's nonsense. Put a negotiable in there and you're done with it.
So, but if somebody contacts me and says, what's the starting salary, and I don't have an answer, then,
Give us your proposal.
Yeah, give us your proposal, the position's developing yet, can you give us a little bit of history on where you've worked, who you've worked for, they're not gonna hang up and move on if they're legitimately interested, they know what it's all about, if they've worked in this type of entity before. So, if they want to tell them to call Bill or myself, they'll figure, you can do that, right? You can tell them, hey, it's being developed right now, could you send us some of your resume so we see what's going on there? And that's gonna take them a few days, and they float it all out to us, and then give us some guidance at that point, hey, this looks like it'll work well or not. We'll probably get a bunch of people that aren't totally qualified, that might think it'd be a good part-time thing, and we might find some very high-end people who might be really looking hard, so I think we get going on it.
All right, so we have a motion by Tar. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Parker.
okay, so I'm gonna need you to
Greg,
tell me what the motion is again then.
I'll make a motion that we post a job position for a bookkeeper for the DDA with the starting date and salary to be negotiated.
Okay.
That's what I seconded.
Hey, can I clarify the term bookkeeper? Because we're throwing out bookkeeper, accountant, treasurer, controllers.
It'll be someone with governmental experience, and they'll, whatever Elizabeth wants to, she posts the ad.
Are we posting bookkeepers? or-
So that's what we have. What you got in your board packets last month was the job description. The title is bookkeeper. There's summary. There is, it talks about, the qualifications, the, language, what the job entails. So that's what would be posted.
I only bring that up because if I were an accountant or a bookkeeper, are they gonna know what that description is, I guess? Or are you putting that in the post? You're putting that in?
Yes, the village accountant is the one who created that job description.
Okay,
Yeah. The job posting and the job description.
You got a
that'll be
motion?
in there.
Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any abstain? Motion carries.
Okay.
All right, moving on to new business. We have the snowman event.
Kind of explained that a little bit earlier, so there's not a whole lot to add to that, I don't think. So if there's any questions on that, we don't have anything to compare it to before, so I think whatever we come up with will be good. What's nice is on the south end of town, there'll be one at Tara Financial, one right across the street at Art Nouveau, going all the way down to the Kezar Library. They'll have one in their front yard, so they'll be spanning both sides of the street. There'll be one over at Mitt TV.
What's the total amount that you ordered?
16, so there'll be 16 of them, and so hopefully the plan is for them to be delivered on, I believe it's Thursday the 27th, whatever the last. So hopefully we can make a big to-do of them coming. They will be brought to each business, and each business can decide how. Yeah, the 27th, Thursday the 27th. That's what we're working towards. You get to decide how you want to market the decorating. If you want to do it in-house, if you want to put it out to your clients, or I was even thinking maybe you want to connect with the schools, Greg, and see if there's a family that might want to help decorate it. Remember, they're reusable. Talked with Christine, DPW, and I talked with Tim Metz, who's the DPW supervisor, and there is room to store some of them there. So some of them will not fit inside of various businesses because of the girth of their lower ends. So we'll want to wrap them for storage and whatnot to keep them safe.
Are they gonna have sort of like material for decorating instructions, like what to use on this? It would be.
Yeah, I'm gonna create that.
Right.
So in other words, if you're gonna stick arms in them, you're gonna have to drill a hole in them,
Right.
because you can't just shove it in there, because it's a good material, so
Right.
you can patch it up over the years and whatnot, so, yeah.
And what's the
Cool.
proposed date for that event?
So the delivery is the 27th, but, and I want them decorated by February 12th. And, so that when people are going around doing the story walk and they're, one of the things, that was one of the other things I wanted to show you. I've been working with Stacy Guzzo, who is the branch librarian for Kezar. This guy's a little big, he's not that big, but these are only like 6 inches tall. And one of the things that Port Huron did is they hid penguins in all the different businesses that wanted them to. So if people came in, into town, they could go, let's go find the penguin, and then they get to keep them. And so that will kick off at the same time that the next story walk will. And so I've purchased those as the DDA's contribution. So those are coming in. They'll only stand about yay tall, and whatever businesses want to participate, they'll have a handful of them. And it'll just be something fun that people can go and go, kind of like Where's Waldo, only where's the snowman? So, but the event itself, whether it be called a Winterfest or a Snowfest, is going to be on Saturday, the 26th of February. And next year, of course, we can push it earlier in February or late January. But we're just trying to work with the time we have and making sure that things, people have time to work on them.
And the date of the meeting is the planning meeting for this?
Oh, yes, sorry. This Thursday at 10 a.m. at the upstairs in the conference room at the Village Hall.
What's the date on that?
The 13th.
Great. Moving on, parliamentarian workshop.
So I went before the Planning Commission after speaking with Christine. I was there for something else, but I promoted this as well. Parliamentarian procedure changed the library around by doing things in appropriate ways, just following parliamentary procedure, by following Robert's rules and whatnot. And sometimes people get real comfortable in doing things loosely, and while it's nice to have that camaraderie, it can sometimes make it difficult to keep the business meeting flowing. And so, Christine, you can speak to your insert that you have.
Yeah, I just had the pleasure of attending a Michigan Association of Mayors conference up in Mount Pleasant, and they had a parliamentarian there who gave us a session on parliamentary procedure. She was so fun and so engaging. I thought, I need to get, her in front of every one of my board appointees, because there's a lot of people who volunteer for this position who may not have any parliamentary experience, don't know how to make a motion, don't know how to second, how to, know how to debate that. And so I also found out she presents as Coco Stewart at the Clerks Association. So Clerk Trapp had the experience and the benefit of attending one of her sessions. I asked Catherine to reach out to her. It was $150 for her to come. I said, book her, please book her. And we'll just send out an invitation to every appointed volunteer in the village and have this educational evening. And so we did that. It's scheduled for January 26th. In this room at 6:30. You have in your packet the agenda item that I presented this to Village Council when I informed them of the event, but I also passed out this evening a letter that I drafted. It gives you her bio and a little bit of information on her, just as well as, of the formal invitation to please join us on the 26th. I think you'll find it fun and educational. And hopefully, like as Elizabeth indicated, we just really want continuity across the, all of our boards, so that we're all sort of functioning and operating with the same respect and attitude that we're, really working for the residents. That's the most important part. So
That's a way to improve best practices as well.
absolutely, yeah.
So from the Planning Commission, there were probably, I want to say there was 3 or 4 of them that was like, oh yeah, this makes sense, let's go to this. So I'd say it's important for at least a handful of you to be there. So that's what that is.
Great. Thank you. Last item here under new business, process to update policies and procedures.
So, already started with bylaws already, that was mentioned. I know you had mentioned last month, Zach, that you wanted to work on the purchase policy, and when Carla and I have been working on the turnover, she said, that's something that I can help with, but we need to get this in place. So anything has to do with finances, Carla's gonna initiate. So purchase policy, investment policy, you don't have an investment policy. And so anything to do with money will be coming from Carla. And there's plenty of other models out there to copy from, to create those. I think based on the workload that there is, we're just gonna have to kind of like bite these off one at a time. There's just not enough hours in the day to get everything that needs to be done. So I think the ones that are most pressing, we do first, but how do you want to be involved in how these get changed? Do you want to have a committee? What is the board's wishes on this?
I mean, from my standpoint, you're kind of doing this more daily, whereas the rest of us are just kind of, we're available for meetings, we can form subcommittees, but are we really going to make as much progress as you would, bringing your recommendations to the board and having us vote based on your recommendations, similar to kind of how you've laid out some of the other call to action items
Sure.
in the agenda? That's just my opinion.
I think on some of these things, it's just, I echo what Zach's saying, but maybe being mindful that you're just calling on all of us for various things, like, hey, this is what I'm looking at, this is what I'm thinking, and kind of brainstorming on a few things there. But I think Zach's right, that's how the most progress is gonna be made. And as I've said before, if there's more work to be done and more time needed to do it, I would encourage you to never feel hesitant to come back to us and say, got a lot to do here, and we all know that. We realize that there's more hours needed here for this, and I need to get paid for it than just make us a proposal or whatever it might be. But I think that's my opinion, is use us how you can, but that you'll probably get it done quicker.
Are you comfortable doing that, or is that not something you want to take on?
So that's a great question, and I appreciate you asking me that. I would say I'm comfortable with that as long as, let's say this is a 3-page draft of bylaws, right? And then you go through it and go, well, we don't like it this way, it should be this way, right? If there's that, I'm wasting my time.
Sure.
If I'm coming to you with recommendations from bylaws that are taking from other DDAs that are successful and it makes sense, it's not reinventing the wheel, right? Just like what I said in my interview. So if that is, and it seems, you all are entrusting me with a lot, and I appreciate that, and, so there's a mutual respect there, so I think we can move forward without a problem with that. My only problem, my concern would be is if it comes and then like, well, we want this change and this change and this change, well, then that could have been done in committee.
Sure.
So I guess we could give it a shot with one or two of them, see how it goes, and if there's a little bit too much, change this, change that, then I would say, this needs to be done in committee, because this is taking too much work otherwise.
And I know you said that the financial end's gonna come from Carla, but at the same time, with that purchasing policy, I think that's a simple enough part of the bylaws right now that is going to need feedback from you, because you're making those transactions on a daily, monthly basis, so like what makes sense for the director to spend in a normal office setting or a normal just functioning of the DDA versus, okay, this needs a little more in-depth proposals and bids and stuff like that. So, I mean, that might be a good jumping off point.
Sure, so
Because
when
it's
I
really
say
just a
she's
dollar.
creating them, ultimately, the director reports to you guys and everybody else reports to the director. So I'm ultimately still approving that, if you will, to then bring that before you guys. So yes, she and I would be working together
Okay.
on that, yeah, for sure.
I think what's most important is just making a list of what policies, procedures do we already have in place? What has this board already adopted? Because again, people come, people go. They may not be aware that there are policies in existence at the village level or at the DDA level, and then making sure that those are incorporated into a welcome packet, so that each and every person has a copy of them when they come on board. If you wanted to say, hey, in the month of January annually now, as part of our rules of procedures, we're just gonna revisit each one of these policies on our own time, if there's no, incentive to revise them, no need to revise them, then they just sort of stay status quo.
From what I could find, you have 4 policies. You have your bylaws, you have a conflict of interest policy, you have a funding request for event or programs, and you have a purchase policy. That's all I've found.
Did we sign a conflict of interest policy in some of those documents here when we came on board? It's been a little while for me.
You have not. You have not. They were adopted, and the conflict of interest policy that Elizabeth's referring to was drafted when I was chair of the DDA by McGraw and Morris. It is different than the conflict of interest policy that's in place for the village. And so that just may be one of those that, again, I would want to make sure that you all had a copy of it. And if you don't think that it's inclusive enough or that things need to be changed, we just set a time, even if everybody's doing it on their own, to say, hey, I'm good with this, I've reviewed it, and I understand, and I agree to it. Versus saying, I don't agree to this, and I don't want to be on the DDA anymore,
Right.
this is going to be your conflict of interest policy, or I shouldn't serve because I have this known conflict, so.
It can be a pretty seamless process doing this, but it's important for me to understand the direction that the board wants to go with it, instead of just assuming that. It's important to understand what your expectations are in response to some of these things. And this wasn't one of my 6-month goals, so it's something that's going to take some time to get some of this stuff done, because there are other things like getting the DDA, the actual list together, the downtown stuff, the website, all of that stuff takes time, and the back work of that takes a huge amount of time. So I want to make sure that if I'm going to do this, just understanding it's going to take some time to get this done.
I don't, aside from the whole updating the treasurer position and trying to remove that from the position.
Your bylaws.
Bylaws, and then some of these other policies and procedures. In my opinion, I trust you enough to know that if they need to be worked on, they will be worked on, and everything else will be priority. I don't think it's anything that we need to form committees over and.
Okay.
There is
Start
a
getting
difference
into the
between
weeds on it.
statutory requirements that we are required when you swear your oath of office to uphold versus a policy and a procedure, which are always recommendations, and Mark Clark will be the first one to tell you, he always recommends that we always follow our policies and procedures, but there are times, there's exceptions to those rules. So statutorily, I think you are certainly in compliance with everything that's required, like having the 2 informational meetings twice a year, right? Those sorts of things that we're discovering that we weren't following. Now we've put that into play, and we're all in alignment.
Okay,
All right.
that was that.
All right, moving on, board member comments.
Do you want to welcome me?
Just a question, can we get a more full-scale and perhaps changeable version of that map?
Look what I have. Look how big that is.
Yeah.
Yes, I have 2 of them actually, and I have a very large, 2 large ones coming. They haven't been delivered by the county
I'm
yet.
talking about something serious like 2x3, because you look
Yep.
at this, and I'm saying 10, 15, 20% of this is wrong, period. It's changed over the years.
Oh, I'm sorry, which sheet are you looking
I'm
at?
looking at the DDA building by use.
Yes, and we talked about that before that went to publication, Bill, and
It's just perhaps something you can have on your wall, and you can change it and we'll note that Dr. Keogh's where there used to be a haberdasher, and it hasn't been changed in 20 years.
sure. Yep, and the county can change that anytime. They have that document, so it's not hard to do.
There's buildings that are gone that they think are still there. But that was my comment.
Okay.
But you're answering it.
I'd like to hear about our new member.
What would you like to know?
Well, first off, welcome to the
Yeah.
board,
Thank you.
Elizabeth. Happy to have a new face here.
I'm happy to be here.
And you're a Romeo resident?
Yeah, a year ago, I think you all got my letter, right? Yeah. Moved on Tilson Street. September of 2020. So it's been nice. So we do all the Halloween decorations and, yeah.
Did you know it was what you were moving into on Tilson Street?
Yeah, pretty much.
So
Yeah.
that was on that, like, the purchase agreement or seller's disclosure, just kidding.
Yeah.
Where'd you move from?
Macomb Township,
Okay.
yeah.
Do you have kids in the school system here?
I do not. We have 3 daughters. Our oldest daughter lives in Traverse City.
Okay.
She's an attorney. Let's see, our middle daughter lives in Denver. She's a therapist, and my youngest daughter lives in New York City. So
Awesome.
they all left us.
Well, we appreciate you getting involved, and hopefully you'll have some insight here.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
welcome.
happy to be here. Been working with Elizabeth on the website a little bit. So.
Yeah, she was on the conference call last week with Sean O'Brien, so she's helping with some of the direction on that and jumping in with,
Mhm.
you know, with both feet on that, so it's very helpful.
What's your professional background? I might have read it in a letter and forgotten, but if I did, forgive me.
I have over 20 years' experience working in nonprofits and private sector, senior living. I worked with the developmentally disabled for many, many years.
Do you have web skills or that type of technology, or just an interest in it?
Somewhat.
When I first had the pleasure of meeting Elizabeth, probably over a year ago, I originally approached her and asked if she would be interested in serving on the Planning Commission. And I almost had her hooked, and then just through other conversations realized that her passion really for Romeo lies in our downtown. She's, you know, frequents a lot of the businesses and is very active, you know, in supporting them, and realized that she really would prefer to wait and possibly serve on the DDA. So when I had the opportunity come up, I reached back out to her to see if she was still interested, and yeah, she hopped right on board. So thank you for your volunteerism.
willingness.
And
Elizabeth, one other thing, if there's projects you're trying to get to, like putting together a list of all the building owners, some of these things like that, if there's some quantifiable stuff that you would come to us and maybe recommend we sort of outsource under your tutelage, I don't think we'd be averse to listening to that. Like, hey, there's a project, I don't have the time for this quantifiable, I don't want to call it busy work, but just a quantifiable job that we could task out, kind of hire it out.
Sure.
There's probably a vendor person, individual out there that might be willing to do it, even if it's a board member that could possibly get involved in something like that and then be compensated some sort of by the board. Because I know there's a lot to do, and we don't want you spinning your wheels and working on stuff that's just taking you too long for what your skill
That
sets are.
would be really, really helpful, because just sending the email out today, just going, okay, what's the email address for so-and-so
Yeah.
business, right? And it's just like pulling that information, it's just, yeah.
Well,
it's
make
hard, so.
next meeting, sooner than later, get us a proposal, hey, I could use some administrative help for the next, 6 weeks, 12 weeks on these projects, this many hours per week, and this would be an hourly rate that I think we'd have to pay to have somebody of the caliber to do that, and then we could look at that. I mean, does this make sense? I mean, we have the money to do it, and we should help her move it along.
Does he have support on that idea? It doesn't have to be a motion, but I just was just curious.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any comments before we go into closed session? No? All right, do we have a motion to convene in closed session?
So if I'm following last month's, we talked about, so I'm going back to the, to the meeting minutes that were just approved. The first thing that you guys did was adjourn the regular meeting.
correct.
Then you entered closed session, so I can do the wording if you want.
I'm just going
Okay.
in order of the
Right.
agenda.
Okay.
Right.
What's that?
I'll make a motion to adjourn
Okay.
The regular session,
regular session.
and it is 8:39.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Support.
That was seconded by Tara.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doing all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, didn't mean to do your job, right? And when it's late, and the score is 0-3, by the way.
Any opposed? Nay. Motion carries.
Okay.
Now you
Are we
may.
alive? We're alive.
Okay, is there a motion to enter open session now?
I don't think we need a motion in an open session, do we?
We did last month.
Okay, I make a motion, we enter open session.
Okay.
John.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
So we're back in open.
Okay, I make.
Oh, I'm sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, we are now back in open session.
Okay, I would make a motion that we authorize the director to make an offer as previously discussed in the closed session,
Yes.
under the terms that we discussed in the closed session.
We have a motion by Parker. Do I have a second?
Anybody?
I'll second. Second by Hayes. Elizabeth, can you do a roll?
Yes, give me 1 second. Okay, Tar,
Yes.
Kellogg,
Yes.
Malzahn,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Kuzminski,
Yes.
Francis is absent, Stevens is absent, Parker.
Yes.
Okay.
I could have really made your day by saying no.
Motion.
I would make, can we make a motion to adjourn?
Motion carries. I have a motion. Do you want to make the motion?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion
I'll
by Parker to
second.
adjourn, second by Tar. All in favor?
Oh my God.
Motion, meeting is adjourned.
Yeah.